Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The ship hummed with anticipation as it broke through the atmosphere of new dawn, the planet glowing beneath them like a second Earth. Dr. Elena Graves stared through the viewport, her fingers twitching against the controls as the blue and green surface of the planet spread below. It was breathtaking. After years of preparation, endless simulations, and calculations, they were finally here. She whispered a prayer under her breath, her mind racing with the enormity of what lay ahead. "Prepare for landing," Commander Lucas Kane's voice crackled through the comm, steady and calm. He was the kind of man who never lost his cool, no matter the situation. Elena took comfort in his presence, knowing he would keep the team focused. The colony ship Artemis descended smoothly onto the planet's surface, kicking up a plume of red dust. Elena felt a jolt of excitement as the landing gear settled into place with a soft thud. This was it, the first step on a new world. The ramp lowered, and she was one of the first to step out, her boots crunching against the alien soil. The air was breathable, as expected, and the sun, slightly larger and warmer than Earth, cast a golden light across the landscape. A faint breeze brushed her face, carrying a scent that reminded her of fresh pine. She inhaled deeply, marveling at how much new dawn resembled home. "Aurora Base," Kane said as he stepped beside her, "has a nice ring to it." Elena smiled. "It'll be more than just a name soon." They had arrived with the mission of establishing humanity's first permanent colony beyond Earth. The goal was clear: build the foundations of a thriving settlement, relay communications with Earth, and pave the way for future waves of colonists. Earth's overpopulation crisis had made expansion to other planets a necessity, and New Dawn was their greatest hope. Over the next few weeks, the crew worked tirelessly. Engineers like Iris Tanaka constructed the initial habitats, using prefabricated modules that snapped together like puzzle pieces. Elena oversaw the scientific installations, including the observation towers and atmospheric sensors. Kane handled the logistics, making sure everyone stayed on task while ensuring morale didn't waver in the face of the enormous challenges they faced. It all seemed to be going according to plan until they noticed the time anomaly. It started with something small. One evening after a long shift, Elena noticed that her wristwatch had gained an hour. She frowned, tapping at the screen, thinking it must have malfunctioned. The next day, the anomaly grew. Several team members complained that their watches were off by minutes, then hours. At first, no one thought much of it. It was easy to explain away the irregularities as the effects of exhaustion or glitches in their devices, but then the anomalies grew too large to ignore. "We were losing time," Kane said during one of their morning briefings. He placed a digital tablet on the table, displaying a graph that showed the growing discrepancy between Earth time and the colony's clock. The colonists looked at each other in confusion. Elena felt a shiver crawl down her spine. "This can't be right," Iris said, adjusting her glasses. "It's impossible for time to move differently here." Elena stared at the graph, her mind racing. As a physicist, she knew time dilation was a theoretical possibility under extreme conditions, such as near the event horizon of a black hole. But this was a planet almost identical to Earth. There shouldn't be anything here to cause such a significant distortion. But the data didn't lie. Their internal clocks were deviating by minutes at first, then by hours. Days on New Dawn passed in what felt like mere hours compared to Earth time. Kane stood, his posture tense. "We need answers, and fast. If this anomaly continues, we could be in serious trouble." Elena volunteered to lead the investigation. She pored over the data, analyzing every variable they had recorded since their arrival. She and her team worked day and night, but the deeper they dug, the more confused they became. There was no obvious explanation for why time was accelerating. Meanwhile, the colony continued to function, though an unease had settled over the team. Every day they waited for a response from Earth. Supply ships were supposed to arrive in a matter of months, bringing reinforcements and resources to help expand Aurora Base. But as time moved faster for the colonists, those supply ships seemed impossibly far away. The waiting stretched on. Communication with Earth became sporadic. Messages sent one day wouldn't receive responses for weeks, sometimes months. The crew grew restless. Anxiety festered like an open wound. One morning, Elena sat at her workstation, running yet another analysis of the temporal data. Her head throbbed from lack of sleep. She rubbed her eyes, trying to push through the exhaustion. There had to be something they were missing, some explanation for this madness. "I've got something," Iris said, bursting into the room. Her eyes were wide with excitement. Though dark circles marked her sleepless nights, she shoved a tablet into Elena's sack hand. "What is it?" Elena asked, blinking against the bright screen. "I was running simulations, trying to figure out where the anomaly is coming from," Iris said, "and I think I found a pattern. Every time the anomaly spikes there, it's just a burst of electromagnetic energy coming from the planet's core." Elena's heart skipped a beat. The core, that would mean that the entire planet is generating the time distortion. Iris finished, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's not random. It's like a consistent rhythmic pulse, and it's getting stronger." Elena stared at the data, her mind racing. If the planet's core was causing the anomaly, then they were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had imagined. The time distortion wasn't just an anomaly, it was a feature of New Dawn itself. She felt a wave of dread wash over her. This planet, their new home, was literally out of sync with the rest of the universe. If the time distortion continued to increase, there was no telling what might happen. They could be stranded here, aging years while mere days passed on Earth. "We have to tell Kane," Elena said, her voice tight. "We need to figure out how to stop this." But even as she said the words, she knew it wasn't going to be easy. Commander Kane stood at the head of the room, his arms crossed over his broad chest as he listened to Elena's sub-report. His face was unreadable, but his eyes flickered with concern as she explained the latest finding. "So you're telling me the planet itself is responsible for this?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," Elena replied. "The core is emitting periodic bursts of energy that are distorting the flow of time. The closer we get to the core, the stronger the distortion. If we can find a way to disrupt those bursts, we might be able to stabilize time." Kane was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the map of New Dawn displayed on the screen behind Elena. Finally, he spoke. "And if we can't," Elena swallowed hard, "then we were stuck. Time will continue to accelerate, and any hope of rescue from Earth will slip further and further out of reach." The room was silent. The weight of her words hung in the air like a leading cloud. Kane nodded slowly. "All right, we'll need to prepare an expedition. A team to investigate the core and find out if there's a way to stop this." Elena felt a surge of relief. Kane wasn't true one to shy away from a challenge. He was a man of action, and if anyone could lead them through this, it was him. "I'll lead the team," Kane said, turning to Iris. "You're coming with us. We'll need your expertise on the energy reading." Elena opened her mouth to volunteer, but Kane cut her off with a sharp glance. "No, Elena, you were staying here. We need someone to keep things running at the base while we were gone. And if something happens to us out there," he trailed off, but the implication was clear. Elena clenched her fists. She wanted to argue, to insist that she be part of the team, but she knew Kane was right. Someone had to stay behind. "Understood," she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "But be careful." Kane gave her a small nod. "We'll do our best." As the expedition team prepared for their journey to the planet, core tensions within the colony continued to rise. Supplies were running low, and the realization that time was slipping away faster than they could comprehend began to weigh heavily on everyone's mind. Elena noticed the shift in the crew: sour behavior, short tempers, whispered arguments, a growing sense of fear that they were running out of time in more ways than one. And then there was Victor Hayat. Victor was a tall, imposing figure with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. He had always been outspoken, but lately his rhetoric had taken a dangerous turn. He had gathered a small group of colonists who were starting to question Kane's leadership, suggesting that perhaps the anomaly could be harnessed, not feared. "If we can control the time distortion," Victor said during one of their impromptu meetings, "we could reshape the future. Imagine being able to leap forward in time to advance human civilization by centuries. We wouldn't need Earth-style help. We'd be ahead of them." Elena had overheated one of his speeches, and it sent chills down her spine. She had seen this kind of thinking before: hubris, arrogance, the belief that humans could control forces beyond their understanding. It never ended well. But Victor was persuasive, and some of the colonists were beginning to listen. Elena watched from the shadows as Victor spoke to his followers, his voice smooth and confident. She clenched her fists, anger bubbling in her chest. This wasn't the time for power struggles. They needed to work together if they were going to survive. She had to find a way to stop Victor before he tore the colony apart. Alina watched Victor's scene group disperse, the colonists breaking off into small clusters, murmuring amongst themselves. She knew it was only a matter of time before Victor's sense ideas grew into something more dangerous. But for now, her focus had to remain on the expedition team heading to the core. Kane's group had already left hours ago, their communication signals faint but still operational as they made their way across New Dawn, rugged terrain, every moment without an update gnawed at her nerve. The base felt emptier without Kane's commanding presence. He was the one person who could hold everyone together, and now, with him gone, the tension among the colonists simmered just beneath the surface. Alina found herself pacing the narrow corridors of the colony's central hub, checking in on operations, trying to keep herself busy as she waited for news. She was in the middle of reviewing atmospheric data when the lights flickered. Her head snapped up. The hum of the colony's power system stuttered, then stabilized, but a low rumble seemed to vibrate through the floor. Alina's heart skipped a beat. She darted to the nearest console, fingers flying over the keys to access the power grid. What the hell, she muttered. The anomaly was fluctuating again, but this time it was affecting more than just their clock. A surge of electromagnetic energy had rippled through the colony, throwing off their power systems. The readings were spiking. Suddenly, a sharp beat cut through the air. Alina glanced at the comm screen, a message from Kane's team. She rushed over, opening the communication link. Alina, we read. It's something big. Kane's sour voice crackled over the comment. His usual calm was gone, replaced by a sharp urgency. The distortion is getting worse. The closer we get to the core, we're seeing pockets of time acceleration, things aging, decaying in seconds. It's sort like walking through a nightmare. Alina's stomach clenched. Can you turn back? No, Kane said. We were too deep now. If we stop, the anomaly might spiral out of control. We have to see this through. Be careful, Kane, Alina said, her voice tight. The fluctuations are hitting us here at the base. If the core starts emitting that much energy, it could destabilize everything. There was a long pause before Kane responded. We know the risks we're moving in. I'll update you once we reach the core. The comm went silent. Alina slumped back against the wall, her mind racing. The situation was spiraling faster than she had anticipated. She wanted to be out there with Kane, seeing it firsthand. But all she could do was wait. She wasn't used to feeling this helpless. Hours passed, each one dragging longer than the last. She kept her mind occupied with calculations, simulations, anything to distract herself from the gnawing anxiety. The colonists were restless, too, moving through the base like ghosts, the unease almost tangible in the air. Then, without warning, all hell broke loose. The alarms blared, red lights flashing through the corridor. Alina's pulse spiked, and she shot up from her seat, sprinting toward the central hub. She could already hear the chaos, unfolding, voices shouting, footsteps pounding, equipment clattering to the ground. When she reached the hub, she saw Victor standing at the center of it all, flanked by his followers. They were pulling equipment from the storage rooms, tools, generators, even weapons. Victor's eyes locked on Alina as she stormed into the room. What the hell are you doing? She demanded, her voice rising over the noise. Victor's smile was thin, cold. We were taking matters into our own hands, Alina. Kane, Sol's little expedition 1T save us time, Saj, running out, literally. Alina's eyes narrowed. You were going to make it worse. You can take control of the anomaly. You don't know that, Victor shot back. What if we were sitting on the key to humanity's future and you were too afraid to use it? Alina took a step closer, her fists clenched at her sides. You were playing with fire, Victor. This planet, it's not something you can control. If you disrupt the anomaly further, you could doom us all. Victor shrugged, or we could save ourselves. Were we done waiting for Kane and the others? We were done waiting for Earth. We were to take control of our own future. Alina's heart pounded in her chest. She knew she couldn't reason with Victor. He was too far gone, too drunk on his own ambition, but she couldn't let him go through with it. If he tampered with the anomaly, if he tried to harness the time distortion, it could tear the entire planet apart. You are not taking any equipment, she said, her voice firm. Stand down, Victor, now. Victor's smile faded, replaced by a cold, hard edge. His followers shifted behind him, their hands tightening on the tools and weapons they had gathered. We're not asking for your permission, Alina, Victor said. Step aside. Elena's mind raced. She couldn't take them all on. There were too many of them, and they were armed. She had to think of something, and fast, before she could act. A deafening roar ripped through the air. The floor beneath them trembled, and the lights flickered wildly. Elena's breath caught in her throat as the walls around them seemed to warp, the space bending, stretching in unnatural ways. The anomaly was surging. Suddenly, the commons crackled to life again, and Kane's sass voice burst through, frantic and broken. Elena, the chorus. The signal cut out, replaced by static. Panic surged through her. Kane, come in. But there was nothing. Elena turned back to Victor, her heart racing. If you try to manipulate the anomaly now, you'll kill us all. The chorus destabilizing. Victor's face hardened, but for the first time she saw a flicker of doubt in his eye. He glanced at his followers, their earlier bravado now replaced with uncertainty. Victor, please, Elena said, her voice low but urgent. You want to survive? Then stop this madness and help me stabilize the base. We can still fix this. For a moment, Victor didn't move. His eyes darted between Elena and the equipment in his hands, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. Then, with a frustrated growl, he tossed the equipment to the floor. Fine, but this isn't tie over. Elena did he waste time responding. She was already moving, issuing orders to the other colonists to secure the base and prepare for whatever was coming. The ground trembled again, harder this time, as if the planet itself was groaning under the pressure of the anomaly. Elena's mind raced with possibilities, calculations, theories, but none of it mattered if she couldn't stop the core from tearing itself apart. Suddenly, the commas crackled again. This time it wasn't Kane's voice, but Iris. Elena, it's bad. Iris said, her voice strained. The core energy spikes are off the chart. We're seeing massive fluctuations, time is accelerating in bursts. Kane's Sima's team, they were not going to make it. Elena's stomach dropped. What do you mean? We're losing them, Iris said, her voice breaking. The core is aging everything around it. They dying. Elena felt the ground sway beneath her feet. Her hands shook as she gripped the console in front of her. Kane's team, her friends, were being consumed by the very anomaly they had come to stop. But it wasn't over yet. It couldn't tree. Iris, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. Is there any way to reverse it, to stop the core from accelerating the time distortion? There was a long pause. Then Iris' voice came through, soft but resolute. There's one way, but it's a long shot. Tell me. We have to overload the core, flood it with enough energy to short-circuit the anomaly and reset the time flow. But it'll take everything we got, and even then there's no guarantee it'll work. Elena's mind raced. It was a gamble, a dangerous one, but it was the only option they had left. Do it, Elena said. Prep the overload. I'll handle things here. Iris didn't argue. The commas went silent, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the knowledge that Kane's team might already be lost. She took a deep breath, pushing down the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. There was no time for that. Now she had to focus. She had to save the colony. Elena moved quickly, issuing orders to the remaining colonists. Victor's group, shaken by the events, fell in line, their earlier defiance gone. Together, they worked to divert power from the colony systems, channeling it toward the core. The tremors grew more violent, the ground shaking beneath their feet as time itself seemed to warp around them. Elena's vision blurred her sense of reality, slipping as the anomaly twisted the space around them. But she kept moving, kept pushing forward. Finally, the moment came. The systems were ready. The overload was prepped. Elena stood at the console, her fingers hovering over the controls, one final command, and it would all be over. She closed her eyes, her mind flashing to Kane's face, his steady gaze, his unshakable resolve. She had to believe that this would work, that their sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. The colony shuddered, the lights flickering wildly as the energy surged through the system. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance, suspended in time. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the core erupted. Elena was thrown to the ground as the explosion rocked the base. The noise was deafening, the world around her shaking violently. She felt the heat, the force of the blast. But then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. Silent. Slowly, Elena pulled herself to her feet, her head spinning. The base was still intact, but the anomaly, the time distortion, was gone. She stumbled toward the nearest console, her fingers trembling as she accessed the data. Time was stable. It was over. She sagged against the wall, her body heavy with exhaustion, grief, and relief. Kane-Sub's team was gone, but they had done it. They had saved the colony. As the sun rose over New Dawn, casting its golden light across the horizon, Alina stood alone, watching the dawn of a new future.